work is strewn with language metaphors. And then I have one poem that takes up his post-colonial concerns, and one that is a personal favorite for its sensuous and playful quality. So, Dr. Rizwan, by your permission, shall I begin?
Yeah, please begin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, since this is supposed to be some kind of a teaching session, because all of us can't speak, so we can't have that kind of an interaction. So I'll kind of just take the floor. So we'll begin with the English lesson. And for those of you who have the entire collection with you, it is page 129. And the rest of you, I think, would have soft copies of the poem, I imagine. So the first thing that struck me about the poem was the title, and the pun on the word lesson. With sorry.
Ma'am, please drop here in the comment box, please. The poem.
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you.
Am I not audible? Ma'am, if you have the poem in soft, please drop in the comment box.
तो यार आपको poems की text पहले share की हुई है ना, only to avoid this interruption.
Okay, sir. I'll find it.
Okay, please. Now, Ayesha, you can continue.
So maybe the class rep could be so kind as to share the image of the said poem on WhatsApp, so everybody has a copy. That would help. All right. So what I was saying was that the first thing that struck me about this poem was the pun on the word lesson, because of Lesson and Lessen, and how the English lesson us and they lessen us. They both teach us and they also diminish us in some way. And the kind of unipolar authority that we have here of the English lesson. They are the ones who decide what to do, what our education is to be, what poetry is to be. But of course, the poet has his subversive tools. So this is something that a small technique that I use for Hini's work. I will use for Rizwan Saab's work as well. And that is the mapping of the first person pronoun. Because हिनी की भी बहुत सी पोइट्री में उनका first person pronoun जो है वो आपको बताता है कि
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I think it broke.
Yeah. So Rizwan Saab's been a great admirer of Hini. मैं खुद बल्कि एक दफ़ा जब मैं काम कर रही थी तो मैंने इनको कॉल करके थोड़ी सी इंफॉर्मेशन भी ली हिनी के ऊपर, क्योंकि ये बहुत अरसे से हिनी को पढ़ रहे थे. अब सिर्फ हिनी को नहीं, वो आयरिश historical background भी और current affairs भी, so he was very involved with all of that. So you see shades of Hini in his work, you see shades of Walcott in his work. But this is just this little method that I use for Hini's poems that I've used for his as well. So if we just first very quickly look at the I in his poem, and let's just quickly scan the poem for the first person pronoun. So it goes: I learned, I traversed, I chewed, I choked, I was. So that gives you some kind of a trajectory for the journey of the I who's receiving this English lesson. So with that, let's begin the poem. The poem begins with this preposition inside. So we begin with a kind of a sense of containment. So we don't know what's in what right now, but inside a falling room, I learned the first lesson. So the falling room is very interesting. It could, of course, be literally a falling room, which is falling apart because of its condition. It may be dilapidated, it may be ancient, But whatever the case, it is not the most wholesome of environments to be in, inside a falling room, and also this being caught in some space. I learned the first lesson. So we see that the condition of education, as usually is that of containment and exclusion, and thereby power. Whoever is teaching has power. Inside a falling room, I learned the first lesson. So that is how education begins. And we see that education, as it usually is for us, it's an education of language, in language, by language. Sounds like democracy, but it is authority. Vowels ejected sluggishly from the throat, oiled by ghazals. The skin collected, jaws and palate resisted, verbs messed up the taste buds. I traversed punctuations, but all freedoms are short-lived. The English teacher reined the rebel in me. The subdued ones, stilled into mock alligators, swallowed a tricky, idiomatic, figurative, or metaphoric gardens. I chewed and gobbled, but some of it remained beneath the tongue with fricative diphthongs and signs of exclamations. I choked, cramped, made faces like a harlequin, until the appetite for Punjabi tales and Urdu flourishes perished in Keri. Then consonants took root. In time, the local enamel went away. They made a new denture, for I was their advanced learner. Come and pluck me. Each entry, each page is a bleeding gum. And the reason why I chose this was because there is a kind of pain that runs through all of uh, the poems. There is it's not a pain that is stifling the poet. Uh, However, there is a kind of a robust attitude towards pain throughout his work, and each page is a bleeding gum. So kind of a beginning of the collection, although it comes fairly late in the collection. It's page 129. So I go back to the beginning, having read the poem. So I learned the first lesson. वो ठीक हो गया, didn't miss anything. I learned the first lesson. Vowels ejected. So we come into now these series of metaphors to do with language and with culture. So vowels ejected sluggish. Now ejected is a very machine-oriented word. Is somebody wanting to say something? So if selected, you could turn off the mics unless you want to say something.
Yeah, please turn off your mics. Let her continue.
Because the voice kind of then distorts.
Yeah, it distorts. Please, Ayesha, you continue.
Okay, thank you. So now ejected is a word that has to do with machine. You eject out of an aircraft. Also, ejection is not pleasant. It's a compulsion. When you eject it, you don't do it as the best thing to do. It's a compulsion. You have to eject. Vowels ejected sluggishly from a throat. And see, look at this, how this reluctant ejection. Vowels ejected sluggishly from a throat, oiled by ghazals, and immediately the entire atmosphere of the poem changes. Now we are suddenly in the Orient. We are in an atmosphere of ghazals. The oil is not now your machine oil. It's your attar. It's a lubricant of the senses that you have. They're oiled by ghazals. Sara mahol jo aapka court life ka hota hai, that is evoked in this one line, 3 words. Great economy, oiled by ghazals. The skin collected. अब वो क्या रहा है? Actually, it's the process of articulation. Vowels ejected sluggishly from a throat oiled by ghazals. And then look at this. This small passage that is actually bringing the sound out. And it's a passage that has earlier commitments. It has a history. It has a history of ghazals. It has a history of perfume. It has a history of sensuous impressions from the Orient. The skin collected, jaws and palate resisted. Now, many of you have done the course in phonetics, and you know that the air needs to flow with an ease through the oral cavity for language to be produced effortlessly. But here, see that every agent of articulation is offering a resistance. Jaws and palate resisted. Verbs messed up the taste buds. No, verbs, which are actually the most delicious part of language, because they act, they give states to you. Verbs messed up the taste buds. Uh, I'm sorry. So jaw, palate, taste bud. We are now in the oral cavity, and if you think of the oral stage that Freud also talks about, you've done some critical theory by now. You've looked at Catherine Belsey. She talks about Lacan. She talks about the mirror stage. She talks about how the child makes no distinction between the body of the mother and his own body, and how the oral stage is crucial to the child's psychosexual development and sense of identity. So see that he is beginning the poem at the oral stage. So taste buds, and then look at the decision. You know, the I comes in. Now it's no longer a habitation of the I, which is smothered or bamboozled by the palate or jaws or taste, but I traversed punctuations. You know, self-assertion. I did it. To traverse punctuations is to go through the syntax. You know, to go to the commas, through the full stops, to the interjections, the exclamations. I traversed punctuation. So it takes charge of education. But all freedoms are short-lived, as this line is short-lived. You know, and straight away the power goes to the English teacher. The English teacher reigned the rebel, as the English teacher, the East India Company reigned the entire continent. That rebelled from this pocket or that, you know, आपका pellet ले लें, skin ले लें, taste buds ले लें, कभी मराठास कर retaliate कर रहे हैं, कभी कोई आपका rebel उठ रहा है, but no, the English teacher reigned the rebel in me. And this idea of reigning, you know, and I looked up the word, and it was very interesting. It has a biblical meaning also, and that is of the kidneys. And I'll just it's no, the kidneys were thought to be the seat of feelings or affections. And not just feelings or affections. It's the emotional quotient of the individual, and and the symbol for that was the seat of that was just हम कहते हैं ना, the seat of passion is the heart. तो वो कहते थे the seat of emotions are the kidneys. Our Bible में the word rain means kidneys, so the seat of emotion and affection. So words anywhere being used, particularly in poetry, carry their etymological, I wouldn't say baggage, but heritage with them. So keep that meaning in mind as well. And then think of this horse. And think of this horse, this power, you know, the horsepower, literally. Nafs ka वो जो हज़रत अली का कॉल है, नफ्स एक सरकश घोड़ा है, you know, so that kind of rebel horse. I traversed punctuations as if punctuations were all the hurdles on the landscape of education. But all freedoms are short-lived. The English teacher reigned the rebel in me and reigned all my emotions. And all of a sudden, I, from the subject position, and you've done this in Catherine Belsey, so you would kind of relate to this. I, from the subject position, goes to the object position, me. So automatically वो passive हो जाता है. And what changes this situation? The English teacher reigned the rebel in me. So then now he is the rebel or me. You know, there are others, the subdued ones, which are not the rebels. What happens to them? Stilled into mock alligators, swallowed a tricky, idiomatic, figurative, or metaphoric, God knows. And suddenly he realizes that possibly his peers, possibly you've done Tomb Road, all those ones that are sleeping in Ireland, all these sleeping people, the entities that do not have the rebel in them, do not have the gumption, the life, the oomph for life, they turn into mock alligators. So it's a kind of a, it's a menagerie around him now, a rock menagerie, so to speak, stilled into mock alligators. So these are those that are tamed straight away, and they are reduced to their animal level, or the reptilian level, if you like, the reptilian brain, the primitive brain. And here is one whose developed brain is struggling with what is happening to him. And there's going to be this tussle between the conscious I and the object position of the I, that is me, that doesn't have power, that doesn't have agency. English teacher has agency. And what do the rest do? The rest simply swallow. About look at the eye, look at the struggle the eye had. Throat, jaws, palate, taste buds, har cheez lad rahi hai. On the other hand, there are the others who simply swallowed, but tricky, idiomatic, figurative, or metaphoric. So this tricky, this whole idea of the deceit of the English, and how we have been tricked, the simpler ones have been tricked into a conversion into mere animals or automatons. And he says, God, I, unka to chode, I chewed and gobbled, and look at the labor in the word. I chewed and gobbled, look at these voiced sounds that are impeding the flow of vowels. I chewed and gobbled, but some of it remained. It's almost like आप गंडेरी खा रहे हैं, वो खत्म तो कभी भी नहीं होती गंडेरी, वो रहती है जब तक आप उसको थूक नहीं देते. I chewed and gobbled, but some of it remained beneath the tongue. It's almost imperceptible, but some residue remains. The diet is not palatable. It's unconsumable. It leaves a residue. And what is it that remains beneath the tongue? And look at the landscape of the oral cavity with fricative diphthongs. This is quite beyond me, how diphthongs can be fricativized, but clearly they are denatured. The diphthongs are denatured. And diphthong is a beautiful sound. It's the diphthongs are the most musical phonemes that we have in a language. So it's almost like the glide is being taken out of the diphthong, and a friction is being introduced into it. Why? Because there's a residue beneath the tongue. Can't really take everything out. And signs of exclamations. Signs of exclamations. So just imagine now this oral cavity, which is not free, which will never be free of language, which will never be free of its first lesson that it has learned. There will always be this residue. There will always be these stray exclamations in the mouth, trapped beneath the tongue sometimes, but they're there. And what is happening? I choked, cramped, made faces. Ab wo sirf is not the oral cavity anymore. Pura badan hai aap, cramped, choked. Just imagine this, and made faces like a harlequin. Now, harlequin is a lovely figure in comedy and in the tradition of art. ये आपका harlequin वो जोकर सा होता है जिसके checkered कपड़े होते हैं और यूं करके टोपी होती है. Kind of a joker. But the interesting thing about the harlequin is that his power is subversive. He challenges the master. He's a servant, but he challenges the master. So, in this one word, harlequin, the contortions, the distortions, the cultural angst, the personal pain, all comes together. And the ability. And the harlequin is very agile. वो इधर से उधर जाता है, उसकी ज़बान भी इधर से उधर जाती है. It's like a juggler. So I thought this word was just absolutely beautifully used, because it brings in an entire tradition, an entire practice of the art, and the power of subversion. So like a harlequin, not quite a harlequin, but like a harlequin. And again, this whole idea of the simile that talks about the absent, just brings it in and makes it a part of the poem. Like a harlequin, until the appetite for Punjabi tales and Urdu flourishes. अब लड़ाई क्या थी? अब पता चलता है कि लड़ाई क्या थी। लड़ाई थी गजलों के साथ, लड़ाई थी पंजाबी टेल्स के साथ, and the Urdu flourishes. And again, this word flourish is such a brandishing and free word. It almost flaunts, like जैसे हमारा लाम होता है, ये बस ऐसे करके मुड़ जाता है, या गाफ के ऊपर आप यूं करके 2 स्ट्रोक्स लगा देते हैं, या जीम का खम होता है. It's a free word, flourish. And Urdu flourishes, Punjabi tales, that's your history, that's your folklore. These are your traditions. इसमें आपका सारा गजल का ट्रेडिशन है, आपका सारा 5 दरियाओं का ट्रेडिशन है, आपकी कहानियां हैं. And Urdu and Punjabi and the ghazal together kind of encompass low culture and high culture, which is something that the student deals with and the student carries. So पहले क्या फंसा था? You had the interjections, the diphthongs. Now something more insidious is happening. He is contorting, he's choking, he's cramped, until the appetite for Punjabi tales and Urdu flourishes perished in caries. Now, caries, again, still in the oral cavity. You have your teeth that have been eaten up. They have been hollowed, and you know how magnified the receptors of the tongue are. वो इतनी सी cavity होती है, वो इतनी बड़ी महसूस होती है. So tongue is a kind of a magnifying reader. It's like a microscope that enlarges whatever it feels. But so it can see within those caves of the mouth. And what is there? Punjabi tales, Urdu flourishes, and they're perishing there. जैसे कीड़ा लग जाता है. So वो पूरी ज़बान को कीड़ा लग गया, पूरे वजूद को कीड़ा लग गया, और उसकी तकलीफ है कि there's choking and there's cramping, but there's also the power. Then consonant took root. अब ज़मीन खाली हो गई. So now the consonants are taking root. Now you can imagine now all that was there under the tongue has become the loam for the language to settle, and the consonant took roots. If you recall, the third line of the poem is about vowels, and see that the vowels pose the greatest threat, because vowels जो है वो रोल करते हैं oral cavity में. Consonant जो है उसको एक और तरह की intention चाहिए होती है articulation के लिए, because you have to place your tongue with great accuracy for the articulation of the consonant. So once all of that is done by the vowel, the softer sounds, the maternal sounds, then the consonants took root. In time, the local enamel went away. And of course, the enamel, the color, the coating, the glazing, the beauty of the teeth, the decoration of the teeth, all of that, the teeth are carried, and it's now being corroded. In time, the local enamel went away. They made a new denture. So now you've seen new dentures, you know how shark-like the new dentures are, the complete new denture. We've seen them on some of our leaders. They made a new denture for I was their advanced learner. It's not I doing things myself. It's not me. It is I belong to them. The possessive, there. I was their advanced learner. So look at this appropriation of the advanced learner, this monopolization of the advanced learner, and who has become the advanced learner with a lot of pain. Also, at a simpler level, the pain of language acquisition, and how your body has to learn new movement, new sounds, to make a new continuum of sound palatable and sensible or intelligible to the other person. They made their advanced learning. So now I'm just removing the denture for a while. They made their advanced learner. So the new denture becomes almost a kind of synecdoche for the advanced learner. ये है आपका advanced learner. And a new denture forcibly fitted on gums. अब वो gums का क्या हाल होगा तो वो भी देख लेते हैं. Come and pluck me. Now what am I? I'm a new denture. Come and pluck me. Give me the release also. Each entry, each page is a bleeding gum. And to pluck the denture is also to remove those consonant roots. And you think of the root canal and how painful that is for those of you who had it. Pluck me. अब मेरे पास तो agency है नहीं. I am their advanced learner. Come. I give you the agency. Pluck me. Each entry, each blade is a bleeding gum. So each poem, each page is a bleeding gum. Why? Because it's kind of impacted with the English language, and the severance is going to give pain. It's going to make the gums bleed. So it's the journey of the eye from the eye that is trapped to the eye that hurts to the eye that becomes a subject of the powers that construct it. So if you look at it in terms of the eye, you look at it in terms of metaphors, you have the main metaphor of the oral cavity, and that oral cavity struggling with a new tongue and articulation, and your oral connection with psychosexual development, with cultural development, and then the supplication, pluck me, because that is my state, that is how I am. So with that, we can turn. Anything that anybody would like to say on this point?
Ayesha, we have a lot of people here, so I think that it will be a little difficult.
Okay.
If we just wait for their opinion. I will say a few things, then you can switch to another point, because we have spent 30 minutes on that, which is wonderful. I just want to say one thing that I really relish or cherish is that I read this poem to Derek Walcott, and later on it got published, and finally it came into the collection. I think that you have made a very extensive, in fact, very deep interpretation of the poem. And I think being a writer who also comes from a part of the world, which English language is not the first language, and the kind of the predicament of the learner of the English language, which starts from a classroom, and how it proceeds, because the local animal has to go out, which is definitely a kind of a subversion actually, and which is unfair or perhaps unjust with the local language, that you take out everything that belongs to the local language and you supplant it with, or you replace it with, like Sujata Bhatt's poem, in which she talks about that she has a language beneath her tongue and a language over her tongue. So I think that the lingual compulsions, the lingual expectations that a new learner has to fulfill actually become a kind of both a predicament and then also relief, actually relief in the sense that he's learning a new language, and a pain in the sense that at the cost of his native language. So it's become a kind of the poem in itself is a kind of a writer's dilemma, actually, writing in English language, carrying a pinch of a guilt with him, and at the same time trying to dispense with it. I think, and especially, I mean, writers like Heaney, because they come from the European, continent, and Ireland was also a colony of England, but it's like the white people colonizing white is very different from white people colonizing the non-white. So Heaney could have said that once he said in an interview that I love English language does not mean that I love English people or English or the British, you see. So I think the poem has a lot of political understatement, and students who are reading post-colonial literature, and the MPhil students, if they have joined, they're also reading, they can understand the kind of the complexity that the poem is actually trying to come to terms with. Once you become a learner, the taught, and the teacher also. So it's also an English language teachers, uphill task of injecting a language, So that's what actually Edward says at cultural imperialism, in fact, that how the language takes out your taste buds, and then your taste or your aesthetics, you see, is changed, or you become more hybrid. So this is all from my side. Over to you, Aisha.
Okay, thank you. Um, so the next one, very briefly, this is
You can
my
take
language.
time. You still have
Sorry?
30 minutes. You have 30 minutes to do 3 points.
Okay, all right. Um, so this is my languages. Again, we'll take the same trajectory of the I, how the I proceeds down the poem. Um, so just look at the beginning of the stanzas. Again, this is something that you will find in most good poetry, where the structure is very clear. You find it in good prose writing, good critical writing, that the first line or the second line of your paragraph or your stanza gives you a good idea of where you are going. So look at the first line, I dream. Next stanza, first line, I talk. Third stanza, first line, now I struggle. Fifth last line, so I am often. And so that's as consequence of it. I dream, I talk, now I struggle, so I am this or that. Okay, so let's just look at it now. The first section is the dream. My language is. So now a language is a language. Okay, again, I'll refer you to Belsey. You've looked at the symbolic order. You've looked at Lacan through Belsey, and he talks about the symbolic order, how it is an order of images, and how language is part of that larger symbolic order, the most fluid part of it. But it is my languages. And when you talk of language, you are, of course, thinking of the languages of the other senses. So it's language of the five senses, and then 2 or 3 or 4 languages at the disposal of the writer. All of us are trilingual. हमारी regional ज़बान है, उर्दू है, अंग्रेजी है, और रज़वान साहब ने क्योंकि inherit भी किया Arabic Persian tradition says, so that's where he begins. And the ancestors, of course, in poetry, you've done post-colonial poetry. Your ancestors are always your personal genealogical line, and it is also your collective line, the cultural or historical or traditional ancestors. आपके वो writers भी होते हैं in the writing tradition of writing, वो culture में आपके और ancestors होते हैं और फिर आपके personal भी होते हैं. So I dream about my ancestors in Arabic. So I'll kind of go stanza by stanza. So let's read the first stanza first. I dream about my ancestors in Arabic, who planted stories in sands and pearls, wrote love tales on fronds of big trees, danced in oases, and left me wondering. So it's just like a wand of enchantment that goes here, left me wondering. The first stanza is, and Rizwan was mentioning Edward Said. He talks about how the Occident or the Western world constructs these romanticized, exoticized images of the East. So we have something of that here. मजे की बात यह है कि हम खुद भी जब ईस्ट के बारे में सोचते हैं तो वो वही होता है, वो हमारा कोई जिनी भी बोतल में से निकल आता है, भाषाएं भी आ जाती हैं और turbans and you name it. So our understanding of the Orient is very cinematic, or it comes to us through illustrations of in fairy tales. So I dream about my ancestors in Arabic. So there's one language. Now, what do we know about these ancestors? Who planted stories in sands and pearls. Now, look at the unreality of this sowing. Who planted stories in sands and pearls. Now, sands and pearls. Look at the grain. Look at the beads. Look at how loose the soil is for these stories. That these stories will of necessity spill out. Such is their such is their such is their habitat of sands and pearls. Also, the exoticized East with its sand, with its shores, its pearls. You know, the pearls from the Orient. You've done Rape of the Lock as well. You know how all the riches and beauties and the perfumes and tortoise shells, they're all coming from the East. वो जब भर रहे थे इंग्लैंड को अपनी लूट के साथ वो है सारी the dreams. I dream about my ancestors in Arabic who planted stories in sands and pearl. But if you look at lines and alphabets, you also get a sense of something grainy and texture. जिसमें से फिर वो शाखें फूटेंगी stories की. Just think of the Urdu alphabet on the page, particularly the Arabic alphabet on the page. Wrote love tales on fronts of fig trees. Look at how organic this is. Wrote love tales on fronts of fig trees, and the front has the capacity to extend itself. एक leaf तो छोटा होता है, the whole front, kind of goes out like this. Who wrote love tales on fronts of fig trees? And then look at the flourish that he talks of the Urdu alphabet in the earlier poem that we done. Wrote fronts of love tales on fronts of fig trees. Fig tree again is a very loaded tree because it's from the biblical story. It has become the tree of life and knowledge. The tree of knowledge, and then the tree that actually gave its leaves to cover Adam and Eve. And now there are tales, of course, and that is the first story. In English, the English language traces its stories back to the Bible. So that's the first story of Adam, of Genesis. So these are the first English stories. But remember now, look at the eclectic stanza where you have Arabic, you have English history, you have the landscape of the desert where you have fronds, then you have the sands and pearls, you've got the fig tree, danced in oases. And so you have this oasis, and oasis means not just water, it means rest, it means civilization, it can also mean cultivation. Oasis is that eye of the desert where everything happens. Danced in oasis and left me wondering. Now just look at quickly the verbs. I dream, the ancestors in Arabic planted, wrote, and then danced. Now let's see what each is doing. I dream about my ancestors in Arabic who planted stories in sands and pearls, who wrote tales, planted stories, wrote tales on fronds of fig leaves, danced in oasis, and left me wondering. And this whole atmosphere of enchantment has left this speaker of the poem wondering. So it's wonder, it is a wonderment, it is bewilderment, it is seduction of images, and it is also a not knowing, a condition of not knowing, left me wondering, and where your knowledge is excited but not satisfied. And that is where the first stanza ends. Now, with all that wonderment, let's see where it goes. I talk in my father's language. Father, of course, is something stronger than ancestors, because father is immediate, father is power, father is protection, father is authority, he is the shelter. It's also the lawgiver. I talk in my father's language, chewed with betel leaves, and of course, पूरा पान का culture जो सारा का सारा अंदरूनी शहर का culture, which Rizwan Sahab is very familiar with, both its lived version and its exoticized version of the betel leaf, and that entire culture that goes around पान का मतलब है कि शायरी भी होगी, पान का मतलब है कि आर्ट होगा, पान का मतलब है कि रंग होगा, no? So all of those connotations are in this. I still talk, I still dream, I still talk. I talk in my father's language, chewed with betel leaf. So the language itself has the aroma, the texture, and the juice of the betel leaf in it, and sung with tapering candles before and after the mutiny. So see how he's measuring time. First he has his ancestors, and now it is time, no bang, before and after the mutiny. And the very choice of the word mutiny, because हमारे लिए वो जंग आज़ादी थी, अंग्रेज के लिए गदर था, तो ये म्यूटनी है, गदर है, और उसका माहौल क्या है? पान है, कैंडल्स हैं, गाना है, गजल है.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Now, there was a break. I don't know. Must be internet from either side. Please continue.
Okay, all right.
Please
So
continue. और मेरा ख्याल है कि आपके पास 15 minutes further हैं और दो poems को touch करने के लिए ज़हन में रख लें आप बस.
okay, I'll just quickly go over this one.
You are
So
swayed actually, swayed by.
The beauty of the poem and the richness of your images.
Yeah. Okay.
What else could happen?
Anyway.
Okay. So people were hanged in words, expressions were concealed in letters, streets were lonely and long like the Urdu dirge. Now, this is something you'll find in Rizwan Saab's poetry again and again. This visual image of the poem. The line on the page, and the line on the page or the sentence on the page will be various things. This is something that I think is inspired by Walcott's writing, because उसके लिए भी horizon भी line बन जाती है, और birds हैं तो वो ticks बन जाते हैं. It's like this whole idea of conceiving of the landscape and the subject of the poem in terms of the poem on the page. So you will find this repeatedly in Rizwan Saab's writing as well. So now your lonely streets, long and lonely streets, are also these long and lonely lines on the poem, and how the poem cuts a line. You remember 1914 from Larkin, those long uneven lines, which are the lines of verse and the lines of these people that are recruiting. Now I struggle with another one. So third language. Okay, so Arabic, Urdu, third language. Now I struggle with another one with which I swam all the oceans, as double-edged teeth. It bites out of loyalty and betrayal, and makes me claim the bastardized forward of a vanity book. So there is a compulsion. Makes me claim. It's almost like the Jabberwocky, kind of bites, and it's shark-like, and it literally जो हम कहते हैं ना, वलैत सात समंदर पार है, तो वो सात समंदर क्रॉस की हैं. I swam all the oceans, possibly dodging its double-edged teeth. So sometimes I mesh it with my personal pronouns. Now, personal pronoun is personal pronouns suggest an I before naming. Because it's an I that is almost refusing to be socialized. It refuses to take the name given to you by society. So it's a kind of a pre-named I, more primordial I, if you please. So sometimes I mesh it with my personal pronoun. Sprinkle some home grind spices. Now a dish is being prepared. वो सारा metaphor desert का, फिर mutiny का, फिर उसके बाद समंदर का. अब you have this culinary delight of language. Sprinkle some home grind spices Then words bob out of my grip like a little child on a remote platform while haggard goes the mom. So I am, often prisoner and custodian, straddles with its fortunes, falling and running. Look at this now, the parallelisms that he's created, the balance, prisoner and custodian, straddles with its fortunes. You know, kind of straddling means one foot here, one foot there, falling and running, the lack of balance and this sense of having been made out of too many tongues. And with that, he goes across the English Channel, which is very interesting because the English Channel is, after all, largely between Europe and Europe. So it's like a migration into another land. I will not look at this further. If there are any directions in which you wish to augment it, you can do that. I will not look at Chapati. Rizwan Sahab, your suggestion, the Waziristan poem or She Was a Language?
Yeah, one more, just a little comment on this poem, My Languages. I conceived this poem when I was flying to England and when the aeroplane was on the English Channel, and I immediately realized this fact that now that I am traversing, this thought came in the I'm traversing, the boundaries, and there are new geographies and there are new spaces, you see, and I, being a carrier of a couple of languages, say more than Arabic, Persian, Urdu, Punjabi, and now the English. So I'm traveling, from one geography to another, which also means that, from one language to another language. So this sort of a one being a multiple carrier of languages, you see, also defines the state of mind of a writer. Actually, he finds himself. So the one line in the poem which explains this is that I'm both a prisoner and custodian. I'm a custodian of my native languages, but now I have become a prisoner of another language. Now, this imprisonment sense is definitely very romantic and fascinating, because when you start learning a new language, it also means that you're falling into love with a new language, you see. But as time passes, as you outgrow the absolute influence of one language, you realize the fact that now you are actually saddled with the responsibility of justifying the ways of many languages to your readers, actually. Hence, the title is My Languages. Now, you can move to another point.
Um, Swansab, I don't think there's very much time. I'll just read Chapati, and how about then?
Yeah, I think we have time. आपके पास 7 minutes and you can touch on these poems briefly. You have 7 minutes.
Okay, then
Because
I
this
think
is what we promised to them, actually.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So you can 3 or 4 minutes on each poem.
All right. Okay. So then let's very briefly look at She Was a Language. I love this poem. It's this one, Chapati, and this the Wazirabad poem. They're amongst my favorites in the collection. So let's just quickly read this again about language, but also about this woman who remains a much desired but a distanced category in Rizwan poems. So let's just see how he distances himself with this object of affection in this particular poem. Again, very quickly, look at the I. Third line, I clean them. Then I introduce, I run out of pages, and then the I just disappears from the poem. And you're going to see why and how does this I disappear. There is another person, there's a woman with him, right? So the scene setting again in context. In the sobering glare of afternoon, her skin glows, eyes stay behind steamy spectacles. I clean them slowly. Winter leaves a hazy legacy on eyelashes, loading analogies. When she inhibits a smile, I introduce words. My intentions are paraphrased like a tradition, timing her tongue to silence, using lengthy phrases. Too soon, I run out of pages and scamper for elbows. Her braid sways like a sentence, whirling me on a mystic path, unaware of end. Space shudders to perfection. There is need to conclude her in a manuscript. So very quickly, see that this poem is kind of advancing in a stimulus response pattern. So you have, and in between you have atmospheric, the lines that are descriptive of atmosphere. So you have the setting of the afternoon, and then the glasses, of course, change of temperature. Garam gaadi mein se baithe hain, usme se bahar nikle hain, kamre mein se whatever, change of temperature, and it's her glasses. It seems her skin glows, eyes stay behind steamy spectacles. I clean them slowly. It appears, it's ambiguous, but it appears that these are her glasses. I clean them slowly. Winter leaves a hazy legacy on eyelashes, loading analogies. So this whole business of the curled eyelash and how it is loading a metaphor from a mechanical world, where the machine is loading rather than the download of the electrical world. And of course, our generation spans these two. So does yours, actually. Okay. When she inhibits a smile, so that's the stimulus. She takes off the glasses, or he takes off the glasses and cleans them. That's the response. She inhibits a smile, and the response to that inhibition is, I introduce words. Because she will not speak, because she would not stop for death. I kindly stopped for her, it seems. When she inhibits a smile, I introduce words. My intentions. So see what all is coming from him. Words, intentions, paraphrase like a tradition. And never do you speak your own tongue. You always speak in a tradition. Um, introduce my words.
आयशा एक ये मैसेज है कि प्लीज टर्न योर माइक ऑन.
My mic is on.
Okay, fine. Just checking.
Okay.
Please.
Okay. So I introduce words. My intentions are paraphrased like a tradition, timing her tongue to silence. And here comes something of power, timing her tongue. And timing, it's almost like, the delivery of words is almost to a metronome. That metronome वो होते हैं जो आपका पूरा म्यूजिक चल रहा है ना, उसमें जो कंटिन्यूअस बीट एक होती है जो वही रहती है throughout the sequence. वो metronome होता है. So it's almost like that. Timing her tongue to silence using lengthy phrases. So it's like there is a power. There is a space that is occupied to silence using lengthy phrases. So there's this language that has taken up the space given to her by the inhibited smile, given to him by the inhibited smile of the beloved, if she is so. And then it so happens that this production of language just takes up its own momentum. Too soon, I run out of pages and scamper for elbows. Again, that metaphor conflating the physical experience in a physical environment with a poem being written on the page. You've done the thought box, you know how it works, how the page is printed or being printed as things are happening in the midnight forest of the mind. So I run out of pages and scamper for elbows. So it's almost like, getting a new life off the page. I scamper for elbows. And elbows are something, kind of you hook on. It's a sling or a latch. Scamper for elbows to catch onto something. And her braid, that is the thing. Her braid sways like a sentence. And look at the wand-like seduction of this braid and the seduction of the sentence. Her braid sways like a sentence, whirling me on a mystic path, unaware of end. So that is where he goes. It's not lattu aapne यूं करके धागे से घुमा दिया, वो तो चल रहा है. Whirling me on a mystic path, unaware of end. End is not even a concern. Line खत्म हो जाती है. What about her? अब उसका भी कुछ करना. Space shudders to perfection. So you have this kind of climatic expression, which seems to be divorced from his journey this time. He's just gone on his own path, unaware of the end. Space shudders. It's not him, it's not her. Space shudders to perfection. Kind of this jolt, this shuddering, this climatic moment that should actually make a change. But what happens? There is need to conclude her in a manuscript. And there's the courtesy of the speaker who can offer her because he's on his own journey. There is need to conclude her in a manuscript. लिख के बंद. So that is her space, and his is of course this journey, the mystic path. With this, I will quickly move on to Damascus Night of Wazirabad.
नहीं, मेरा ख्याल है कि ये हमको शेयर नहीं की हमने पोएम.
ये फिर जस्ट एज वेल, क्योंकि ये बहुत लंबी भी है ये.
आप चपाती जो आपने जो 4 मुझे कही थी ना, वो मैंने शेयर की थी. सो लेट्स टॉक अबाउट चपाती क्विकली एंड देन मैं उसके बाद फिर वाइंड अप कर लूंगा.
हाँ जी, प्लीज ठीक है. अच्छा, चपाती तो बस आप ये
I lost voice. Hello.
Okay, I'm back. So here is our chapati taking shape as the poem takes shape. On the wooden platter, a rounded mountain lingered for shape. आप सोच लें कि जिसना sculpture भी बनाता है ना कोई lingered for shape, stuck on the palm. The podgy ball toddled in coquettish flourish. Blanching, thinning, out goes your life on soot-friendly tawa. Expanding like the chest, the moon disk chapati to birth, spared for eaters, patted, and put in straw-woven baskets. Wheat scrubbed, rural queen, offered with English butter in the open market. This poem speaks for itself. I will not soil it. Sir, over to you for those 2 poems which are more recent, which I suppose the students have also read. So if you could say something about.
Okay, I will try to wind up the next 10 minutes.
I'm sorry for hogging up all the time.
No. You were supposed to speak more on all these points, which you have done in this 1 hour. I think Chapati is a poem which is very much about creative process also, and the people who actually try to make round chapatis. Actually, the kind of the pressure the girls after marriage have on them to make round chapatis. That's the lighter side of the whole thing. So if you're trying to make the round chapatis, it means that this is going to have that symmetry and balance and everything. So the chapati should not be hard on the edges, and neither it should be burnt from the center. So the image of the tawa, which gives a kind of a sport to the chapati. So this is a kind of a creative process that the writer also is in it. But I think other than that, there's another layer in the poem in which when comes the English butter, actually, because the food is a very important signifier in post-colonial literature. And we see this, so many of our food, or the food from this part of the world, has now has claimed the palates of other people, or the English palate, let's say, as the butter English say, English butter, and certain brands of English butter. So they have also started eating the food, which also is a kind of an exoticization, as I would say, there's often talked about that how Orient has exoticized us. So chapati remains a kind of an exotic signifier in the mind of the Orient, So the poem can be seen in multiple contexts. Okay. Now I have shared, now because we are here today talking about poetry in such distressful times, when the world is hit by this pandemic, but that, and people are confined, some of the nations are totally confined. We are a little different, actually. So our sense of isolation is very different from others, but everyone, one way or the other, is influenced by the enormity of the event, which has had happened in previous civilizations too. But for modern civilization, coming to terms with the magnitude of this sort of a pandemic, is something very different. Actually, we know that there have been plagues in bubonic times in Bible and many other sacred texts. They also talk about pandemic, but this is very different in my view. The 2 poems that I have shared are also written, or somehow they resonate with what is happening in today's world. These poems have been recently published. Another poem that is coming in August is Rain in Lockdown, that is not published but has been promised by the editor. So if you look at the one poem, Departure, first of all, I think both poems have preoccupation, with what is happening today, actually. And I think what is redeeming is that this time of quarantine or isolation has once again brought us to the brink of poetry. So what Heaney calls the redress of poetry. So I hope that poetry holds out something for us in such times of distress. And we have sounds and language going on. We still have sound and voices and language. So it's not over actually. It's something like that. Heaney said that if you have words, you have a future as long as we have words. And this is something the Irish president, Michael Dickens, I think he said on Heaney's death that, well, he was the one actually who was the keeper of our language, you see. So I think that the role of poetry, or for that matter, poet will remain will become more poignant in such times, just like Marquis has realized love in times of cholera. So in such times, you see, I think the efficacy of poetry, the relevance of the poetry even become more, urgent, and I think that sense of urgency is conceived somehow in these poems. And I'm very briefly just using the text of the poems which I have shared, talking about that. The first poem, Departure, we know that we are in a state of a departure actually now. Departure from what? Perhaps departure from excessive rationality. Pope Francis has recently said that, well, when every decision is taken around money, then this will happen, what has happened to the modern world. But there are people who are not ready to accept that also. Well, we know that. But I think that we know that world is already on a brink of departure actually. Now, what will come afterwards is yet to be seen actually. Now the poem does talk about the idea of departure in multiple ways. It's just like two people breaking up, they're not living anymore together. But if you see, the pandemic has also brought people together actually under one roof, perhaps, you see. Well, it has multiple connotations, you see, it has multiple results to come. We do not know. There's a word in the poem, aftermaths. Therefore, I came out to see the aftermaths actually. And when the persona of the poem comes out to see the aftermath, what he finds is that there is a creeper that is still dripping with rain. And the dripping of the creeper reminded the persona of the sounds, which his beloved or wife or companion or partner or whosoever or a friend, who also had voice, now that he or she has left those sounds in the storeroom actually, or in the room. So the rooms echo with the words of the departed. And there is a rusty wire also. There are unpegged hangings, you see, they are fallen on the ground, they have fallen on the ground. And when the person who is left behind, he tries to retrieve, those things, just look at this word retrieving. So at the moment, the humanity is also trying to retrieve, what we are trying to come to terms with the severity of the virus actually, and how it has actually taken so many human lives actually, pandemic or epidemic, whatever you call it. So the poets or the persona says that I soiled my hands. So if you look at your hands, you see they are soiled. But they're soiled with what? I hope if they're soiled with some sort of a guilt actually. If I hope if they're soiled with some sort of a regret, or if there is a desire for some sort of a penance, not in the religious sense, typically speaking. So the person tries to retrieve the towel that is fallen on the ground. It is already soggy, dirty, and there is a shirt also, which is clasping desperately, clasping. If you see that, clasping, gasping, trying for life, on the verge of death, something that is desperate to stay on, So we want. So I think that sense of desperation is also felt in the contemporary times. You see, when we see that this beautiful edifice of civilization, and more precisely speaking, Western civilization, we are so much proud of, and yet we see that there seems to be no solution to this crisis, except that one has also seen the resilience, you see. So we just can't say that, these are definitely gloomy times, you see, but we also have seen the resilience. So this clasping of wet fern. So the shirt is now, adhered to a wet fern, It has not soiled, you see, but it is about to be soiled, or maybe it will soil. And then the slippers in the wet grass squelch, reminding the persona that he is alone actually. But I think the crunch line is this: I assembled. And if you look at yourself, all of us are trying to assemble now. We are trying to come to terms with the novelty of the situation, actually, And we're trying, we feel disintegrated, shaken, taken apart, shocked, and so much and so on. But we are trying to assemble. It's like that our spirits are broken somehow. We realize that affluence, prosperity, rationality, medical perfection, pharmaceutical perfection, these are things which we talk about daily, but still life has become so vulnerable. And that vulnerability, ironically, is once again the sign of revival, actually. Just like Eliot said, winter kept us warm. So hopefully this isolation, the spirit of self-discipline keeps us warm, warm with the human feelings, warm with the fact that we are survivors, that we will survive the pandemic, that we will survive the situation. But there's a lot of time for us to reckon, to analyze in retrospect, actually, in terms of history, just from Kevin, anachronistically. At this moment of history, we need to realize and what is actually the art can do, in fact. And so I think that this therapy, art being something therapeutic, something that takes care of, comes at a time, and perhaps it needs to come out now. It's time, actually. So that's why the persona in the poem, all the staggering, falling, trying to assemble the furniture of love. And you can just see this metaphor, the furniture of love being scattered now, how scattered we are actually, although we are in the so-called safety of quarantine. And we're trying to rent another place, actually. That means we're looking for another realm, for another existence. So this is very, this becomes through, this becomes a kind of a realization in the end that, well, you have to move on. So you have to move to a new place, actually. So something has to be done about that. So the moment of departure is definitely a moment of soul searching also that we need to look into. The next piece which bears a French title, and when I read the word, I was immediately struck by the depth of this expression, la parole de vie. My French is terrible. So la parole de vie means call of the void, actually. The call of the void is a kind of a mental state कि जिसमें आप एक edge पर एक precipice पे होते हैं और आप jump करना चाहते हैं दूसरी side पे, आप चाहते हैं कि बस अब it should finish, but you do not, because it's a mental state. The very first line is from Gertrude Stein novel, It Was a Strange Winter. Now we know that we are no more, this is not winter बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, but I think this poem in a very implicit manner and in a very what you call के जैसे fused narrative होता है, fusion जिसको आप कहते हैं, deeper. It talks about the consequences, actually, which can be very, very sad, actually. So if you look at the images like trees being spooked, you see simultaneously. 6 leaves hang like portraits. Now this is what actually we did with nature, in fact. We made the trees, we denuded the trees. This is what actually now we are facing, So we know that Mediterranean mein or Venice mein or Florence mein jo whales and they have come out. We know that animals are roaming freely on the roads because we caged them. Who brought the idea of zoo, actually? Why we keep animals in zoo, it's just because our children go there, we go there and we smile and they give us entertainment. Now, we are also zooed, actually. In the present state, we are also caged inside our homes. So this is humanity's nemesis, actually, that we are facing, actually. So why we turned trees, actually, into hanging spots, the gallows, you see. And this is what actually is happening, that. So we are no more there, in fact. We are supposed to be there, but we have shown irresponsibility, in fact. And when you show responsibility, you suffer, actually, So you see the images in the poem, the denuded, the rabbit skinning, the lumps of soil and the landscape of beings, as if it's almost turning into a ghostly landscape. So we see many cities in the world locked down. They look like ghostly cities, you see. No more the cities, you see, they used to be, So we see that out of this degrading image, there is an old woman rummaging through the litter, actually. So I think it has that sort of a, existentialist, existentialist notion of human life. And she is rummaging through, but she's also rummaging for big words. We know that we are using a lot of language these days, and some of the language has become the part of our daily vocabulary now, flattening the curve, quarantine, and so on and so forth. We know that this has become the integral part of our current vocabulary, actually, which is also an evidence of the fact that we are alive to the situation. but it also means that we know nothing, because these are the words we are parroting and repeating. These are the words which are given to us by the politicians, by the doctors, you see, and the social workers, and many, many people whose intentions one cannot doubt. But yet it doesn't mean that we are in safer hands, you see, unless we pay back the nature what we have done to it, that how we turned into a place of gallows actually. So there are ghostly blinds down, a car is moving through, and they are trying to find an address. This is that the lost generation sense, because there is a line from Gertrude Stein poem, It's a Strange Winter. So we see that there's a man sitting on a bench. We see the poem in a typical modernist sense as those fragmented images of a landscape that is partly urban, partly rural, and perhaps nothing. You know. So the factory in which a woman works and a man who waits for her, you see, and the evening that is showing its intense and long roads. I think that the poem, which means Call of the Void, is that this current situation in which we are, it has actually made us, it has made us, or it has compelled us to think that we are creating, or we have been guilty, we have been culpable of making the world void. So place the word devoid now. So we're trying to divide the planet of nature. We're trying to divide the planet of plants, you see, and we are turning into a greenhouse of our desire actually, the skeleton. There is no flesh, you see, and we are nude actually. We are nude because we have done something wrong. I just want to stop myself here and write. I hope that whatever I said did make some sense. Aisha, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can. I can.
All right. So I'm just stopping myself here. In the end, I just want to say a special thanks to Ornab, Rashid, and Noman. They have tried their best actually to organize this meeting in such times, you see. And I hope that everybody heard me and Aisha, and they may have benefited something from it.
Okay, so sir, do I have permission to share something now?
Yeah, who?
Okay. So today, everybody, today we had great poet Rizwan Akhtar with us, who has profound mastery of the nuances of language. Readers, audience, and all the students present here particularly struck by the broad-mindedness of his poetry. In form of your work, we have poem after poem, luxurious reflections on culture and histories and traditions as well. It was a great session indeed. Thank you so much, Sir Rizwan.
Thank
And
you very
also
much.
also,
Yeah.
on behalf of everyone, I would like to thank Ms. Aisha Burke, who was
Yeah.
moderator of
Thank
the
you very
session.
much, Aisha.
My
Undoubtedly, the
pleasure.
session might have
Pleasure.
not been possible without you, ma'am.
Yeah,
So
of
My
thank
course.
you
pleasure.
everyone
Of
for
course.
for your cooperation. So big hands for Ma'am Aisha Burke and Dr. Rizwan Akhtar.
Thank you very much. Let's sign
Thank
off
you.
now.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
You too.
All stay safe.
You too, sir. Thank